China-Africa cooperation mean for the global efforts to end HIV/AIDS? I spoke with Michel Sidibe, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, to find out. I also spoke to Alan Cherry Martin, Minister of Trade and Industry of Ghana, on bilateral trade relations and the integration of the two countries' development strategies. Welcome to The Point. From Beijing, I'm Lu Xin. China and Africa will deepen cooperation in the healthcare sector as part of 8 major initiatives Chinese President Xi Jinping announced in a keynote speech at the opening ceremony of the 2018 Beijing Summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Specifically, China and Africa will strengthen cooperation in fighting AIDS, malaria and other diseases. Xi said China would upgrade 50 medical and healthcare programs for Africa, with a focus on flagship projects such as the headquarters of the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention and China-Africa Friendship Hospitals. What will China-Africa partnership mean for the health of African people and beyond? I spoke with Michel Sidibe, the Executive Director of UNAIDS and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. I started by asking him where we are in our fight to end AIDS by 2030.
You know, it's always very interesting because when people they saw this title, they said miles to go. What Michel is trying to really say, what we want to say is that we have been able to achieve a lot through global solidarity. This fight has been a transformative one. We brought a civil society very early. We have been able to have a political leadership. We have been able to bring private sector, manufacturers in this fight. We changed completely the face of the epidemic. A few years back, people were dying, lying on their bed. No hope, no medicine, nothing. Today, we can say that we have more people on treatment than people waiting for treatment. 22 million people on treatment. The cost of the medicine is $75 per person per year. It was $15,000. So we have been achieving a lot. A commitment coming from a different constituency, like I said, first ladies, they fought to make sure that we stop the transmission from mother to child. But we have miles to go. We have miles to go because today we are faced with a huge complacency. Young people don't protect themselves. Prevention is not coming like we thought. Adolescent girls are left behind.
So what are the measures to fight this complacency, which could endanger our goal to eliminate AIDS by 2030, and what are the challenges still ahead?
I think we need to really confront this conspiracy in many fronts. First, we need to really make sure that we change completely our narrative about AIDS. People today, they have drugs. They're not anymore scared. They have the impression that they can live longer. Young people, they don't have the same information. We have a new generation who have not been exposed. So it's very important for us to really promote a new prevention narrative. Prevention, making young people actors of change, using social media, transforming completely our approach. Secondly, I think we still need to fight stigma, discrimination. People are scared, even if we are in this epidemic for 30 years, 40 years, people are still scared of getting this virus. Those are areas, research and need to continue. We need a cure, we need vaccine. Yeah. Those are elements which are important.
Yeah. And we're at a very interesting period of time when China and Africa are coming very close. China is a big country which has also suffered from AIDS and HIV infection, and Africa, needless to say. So how do you look at China and Africa's cooperation, and how do initiatives such as FOCAC and the Belt and Road contribute to your efforts?
I think FOCAC and Belt and Road are transformative approach. For me, it is about partnership, it is about building a new vision, how to work together, how to support multilateralism, how to really transfer knowledge, transfer competencies, transfer certainly also technology. And China will be probably, in the next years to come, through this partnership, will be one of the most important partners in social sector. President Xi said yesterday, rightly, that what we need is a knowledge economy. It is what we need is a healthy society. What we need is a different governance system where people can have a choice for their future. And those type of philosophical approach translated into pragmatic way to deal with development will be critical.
Yeah, you mentioned President Xi's speech at the opening ceremony of the FOCAC. What kind of significance do you think his speech and this summit will have in your work? What is your feeling about having heard his speech, and how is that going to contribute to your work?
I think it will mobilize a lot of private sector. It will bring researchers. It will make sure that we can start thinking about producing certainly new drugs, less costly. It is about building a partnership with Africa for local production. You know, we have 25% of the disease burden in the world in Africa, but we are producing only 3% of the medicine we are consuming. So then this partnership can also help to strengthen the capacity of Africa to produce medicine which are not under patents.
Well, yesterday he mentioned among his 8 action plans there was one specific dedicated to public health, to enhance the public health capacity and ability of African countries. What do you see in there? Are you, what is your hope that once implemented, what it can do?
I think first he was really very clear by saying that we need to transfer competencies. We need to build the knowledge also and capacity in African countries to deal with the epidemic. And we also, what was very interesting in this part, he was not just talking in a rhetorical term. He said that we have some disease which we need to really work together to end. And HIV/AIDS was one of them. And it means that in the future for Africa, this partnership will help us to be more practical and reach people who have been left behind. And that is very important.
Yeah. So what kind of cooperation will be enhanced under the framework of UNAIDS and China cooperation?
I think we are doing already a lot, but what we will be certainly be able to do is to make sure that this Barefoot Doctors initiative, which we have been launching with African Union, 2 million community health workers, will become a reality. Reinforcing the capacity of research, like I said, pharmaceutical research, training people, making sure that we can have a regulatory system which will help us to better monitor the quality of medicine, and also improving infrastructure so we can go for universal health coverage for people who have been left.
Well, on the sidelines of the FOCAC summit, or the first ladies have not been sitting idle, right? Professor Peng Liyuan, together with some other first ladies, have been very, very active in advocating the prevention and treatment of HIV/AIDS. How do you see their role, especially in talking to young people? As you mentioned, young people are the very important group you have to tackle.
You know, the first ladies are a critical force for advocacy, for helping us to translate policy issues in terms of practical action in the field. And the First Ladies' work daily are making a big difference. making difference for breaking the silence around difficult issues, breaking the silence around stigma, discrimination, reaching orphan. I've been traveling with the First Lady of China and many other First Lady, but I want to say that I was always impressed. Going to university, mobilizing young people, making them soldiers for prevention, going back to communities, working to help in villages, people who are in need. Today we will be even saying that because their effort, we have been dreaming long time that we can say that babies will not born with HIV. But that is happening today. It's happening because their action, because their advocacy, because their effort every day.
What's your expectations then in the near future for cooperation projects of UNAIDS with China and in Africa?
I think my dream is to make this two big part of the world more inclusive, bringing young people who are really the force of the transformation of the future world to work better together, to leverage China as a powerhouse for helping us also to fight poverty, to transform our society and make it better for the majority of African and Chinese.
Well, indeed, yesterday President Xi emphasized 6 different areas where China want to work on to build a community of shared future. What is your evaluation of these principles and these actions that China is determined to uphold in helping develop Africa together with China?
I think it was 8 main areas.
8 action plan.
8 action plan. I love this 8 action plan because President Xi is very practical in his vision, and people can really understand what he wants to say. And from my point of view, those 8 are not exclusive. They were really inclusive. Because he was talking about a green economy. He was talking about building a capacity to be able to fight hunger, change agricultural, linking that to health, education, and also business for building a new industrial framework. So those are critical issues when you link that to is a vision for education for all. And I personally feel those action plan or will create a new momentum for the continent, momentum for each countries, and something very interesting. It didn't really miss the point on a fragile economy. On vulnerable communities, on issues related to humanitarian setting. So it was comprehensive and up to all of us to make it real.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are very happy that China has announced additional financial support for Africa.
I think that was a bold move of commitment to the cause between China and Africa cooperation.
I really welcome the initiative, and I was really impressed.
That really touched my heart. One of them is industrialization agenda and the infrastructure development.
This event is not only an economic event also. It has other angles, other dimensions. It sends message to public diplomacy.
We have a lot to learn from China, one of them being good governance, leadership, commitment, hard work. And you know, everything is being done in a very systematic way.
All cooperation that can help people to live a better life.
Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks with Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo. The two leaders agreed to inject new vitality into their bilateral relationship. China and Ghana have enjoyed great people-to-people exchanges in decades, and in recent years, more than 6,500 Ghanaian students are studying in China, ranking top on the African continent. So in what other fields might this year's forum spark the bilateral relationship? And as one of the most stable countries in Africa, what is Ghana's role in promoting China-Africa relations? I'm pleased to be joined by Alan Cherry-Martin, Minister of Trade and Industry of Ghana and former Ambassador of Ghana to the United States of America. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. So how do you evaluate the current state of China-Ghanaian trade and industrial cooperation?
Well, first, you need to appreciate that Ghana and China has a very special relationship that goes back several decades. I'm sure you're aware that our first president, President Kwame Nkrumah, had a very close relationship with Premier Chou En-lai and Chairman Mao. And so the seeds of friendship were sown not today, but 60 years ago. And that has carried on, although there have been periods within our collective history when there have been low levels of trade. But I think that over the last 10 years, you can see that the significant improvement in both the trade and investment regime between our two countries. There are already a number of pipeline projects that between the last FOCAC and now we've been negotiating. And so I see this basically as the icing on the cake. These pipeline projects that have been negotiated both on the side of our two governments and also the private sector on both sides. You know, a number of these projects are now coming to fruition. I must say that it's not all about government-to-government relationship. There are businessmen from Ghana, businessmen and businesswomen who are very strong, very aggressive, you know, and they've been able to identify, you know, Chinese partners who are also now responding to those opportunities in Ghana. So as we come to this summit, we are coming to cement some of the investment relations that have been negotiated over the last year and before then.
What are you looking into in terms of the one district, one factory initiative or the industrial park per district vision? What kind of opportunities are trying to write on? Because China has this massive China-Africa initiative and also have the One Belt, One Road initiative. So what are you looking at this moment?
So basically each district already has certain resources, natural resources that they are endowed with. So what government has done is that we have profiled the opportunity in each district. And so we've been able to get Ghanaian promoters who are interested in promoting these business opportunities in each district. So what we are looking for is first the supply, as I said, supply of equipment and machinery. Again, also EPC contracts, and then also being able to attract investments into these district enterprises. And already we are working with several Chinese companies. This is a major opportunity for Chinese investment, because you know that many years back when China started the township, what they call the township enterprises. I don't know whether you know about it.
Of course.
These were many years ago.
Yes.
Basically, it's a similar concept. And through this, we're going to literally bring industry to the doorstep of the ordinary Ghanaian. Because if people in the rural areas have economic activity, they will not come to the city. And so this is how we want to be able to improve the standard of living of our people.
How have been the response from Chinese government, from Chinese private sectors, and have there been preferential policies or encouragement from the Chinese government to invest in Ghana?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Already, as I said, through one major company, state company here, it's China National Building Materials Company, CNBM. CNBM is the largest Chinese company in terms of building materials. So they have been working with major Chinese financial institutions, and they've been able to identify almost like $2 billion from these Chinese banks to support the One District, One Factory. And for the first phase, we've agreed on a number of projects worth about $400 million. So then CNBM can do the EPC, and the Chinese financial institutions will work with the local business promoters. And then, and some of the exports are going to come to China. But this is just one example. There are many Chinese companies who can actually also participate directly, either through joint ventures or on their own, in this One District, One Factory initiative.
What have been the benefits of increased Chinese investment and trade relationship with Ghana? Have the local, for instance, job markets been benefited, or people be able to buy more good product at a lower price or sell more products to China? I know Ghanaian exports to China have grown exponentially.
Yes, absolutely.
And what are the challenges?
Yes, a number of benefits that have come. First is increased employment. As you know, the #1 development challenge confronting not only Ghana but the whole of Africa is how to deal with the problem of unemployment. And we know from the experience of China and many other advanced countries that it is through industrialization that you can actually optimize your potential for job creation. So that's one very significant benefit. The second also, as I said, by supporting, whether it is in energy or industry, by helping Ghana to industrialize, we are also stemming the tide of rural-urban migration. Because if things are happening in the rural economy, you don't have that migration coming. Thirdly, also, by supporting Ghana in our industrialization drive, we are also able to export more and end foreign exchange. In addition to that, we are also able to produce some of the goods that we are currently importing. So that also reduces our import bill, and that's very significant. Also, it is transferring technology, and building local skills by the kind of partnerships that they are. So whichever way you look at it, I think that it's been very positive. Yes, there are still, we could do better. We can hope that we can get more Chinese banks and more Chinese private sector companies to do joint venture with our local companies. Because, we want also to empower our local businesses. And if we get Chinese companies to do joint venture with our local companies, I think that is a very good formula,
Well, it's all looking good. It's all sounding very optimistic, great prospects. But you mentioned several banks. You mentioned Chinese investments. And in that process, of course, you have to borrow money. You have to get loans. And I'm sure you must have heard, right, a lot of criticism about Chinese financial burden on African countries and the worry that they will not be able to pay them back. What is your consideration on this?
So for me, the solution is what I said before. Already most African countries, including Ghana, are overburdened with debt. Once you're overburdened with debt, it has a certain multiply effect on your economy, and it becomes a vicious cycle. The only way you can break this cycle is to attract foreign direct investment in joint ventureship with local companies. Because if Chinese companies, either through their own resources or by borrowing from Chinese banks, can partner with our local private sector, then the issue of debt does not arise. It is investments. So we don't want our relationship only to be focused on EPC. We want it to be a partnership also based on investments so that we can avoid this challenge of, let's say, enlarging our debt portfolio. And that, for me, I see it's very clear. There are a lot of Chinese companies that want to relocate. You know, China, I think that China is now going into a different phase of their development.
Right.
Rising labor costs. You are now moving into new sectors. So the traditional brick and mortar in manufacturing, now is the time for China, whether state-owned enterprises or private companies, now to see how they work directly with the local private sector in Ghana and in Africa. In that case, the issue of debt does not arise and becomes basically a win-win situation, and it will strengthen our friendship.
Yeah. There are also other exchanges, for instance, the connectivity of people, the training sessions. We know, our understanding is Ghana has the largest number of students studying in China, over 6,500, and then in 2016 alone, over 1,000 Ghanaian officials and technicians have been receiving training here in China. Why the enthusiasm, and what do you think that can do to bilateral ties?
First, I think to commend the Chinese government and the embassy in Ghana for making more scholarships available to Ghanaian students. I think that our Ghanaian students, when they come to China, perform very well.
Indeed, they're winning Chinese-speaking competitions.
Absolutely. So if we are not performing well, you will not increase the number of scholarships. So I think to commend the Chinese government for always increasing our quota of scholarships. But I think overall the real benefit is that when you have Chinese, let's say, students now interacting with, let's say, Ghanaian students, they start a new level of friendship, which may not have existed before. And so that within the next 10 years, we will see the real benefit of these cooperation in terms of education.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan,
it's a pleasure.
For your interview.
It's
thank you.
Pleasure.
And that was it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.